All right, I'm going to talk about how understanding suffering leads to liberation from it, and what exactly is suffering and why do we experience it. It's a beautiful day outside, but suffering is an interesting thing because in the middle of it, you really don't appreciate it at all because it's so it's such a heavy state of being. But in reality, suffering is all perceptive. It's all based on your perception. So really, if you can change the way that you look at suffering, then you can change the way that you relate to suffering. And when you change the way that you relate to suffering, then the suffering feels different after that. And that's what we're trying to get to, is a point where you can go through experiences in life and not think of it as being suffering per se, but more to just kind of like observe it as another experience, or a word for it would be it's all just phenomena occurring in front of you, and it's just dependent on the way that you look at it. So it's dependent on your emotions at the time and the way that you relate all of your thoughts and your feelings to your external world, and what you consider as something that you think is something that you don't want to feel or something that you do want to feel. And all those judgments and those labels that you put on things actually is what creates the suffering. Because otherwise, if you didn't label anything like that, then it wouldn't be considered as suffering. It would be more of just another experience that you're experiencing. And the only reason that it becomes suffering is because you put this label of good or bad onto it. And that is actually it's really funny because, you know, it's so simple, but the people who have the most trouble with this are the people who really don't want simplicity in their life. They want everything to be very complicated, and that's not a bad thing. That's just, it comes from a complicated mind, and it comes from an overactive mind, and it comes from the stimulation that we've been put through, and like all these different ways of being that we've been taught to uphold, and comes with technology and the immediate gratification that you get from using technology, and like the dopamine fixes and all that kind of stuff. Like all of it plays into your experience of life, and in that experience you can choose to decide how you react to it or how you take it. And with suffering in particular, it's very interesting because it's all subjective, you know. Like it's one person could go through one thing and another person could go through the exact same thing, and then that would actually in turn hold on, there's people. How's it going? But that would actually in turn change the outcome of the experience. So basically, if you could have two people who have the same exact experience, and one person takes it as positive, the other person takes it as negative, or three people actually who have the exact same experience, and the other person neutrally takes it and just kind of like goes with the experience. So positive and negative are two ways of looking at something, right? It's two ways of perceiving, and in positive polarity, the quickest way to polarize yourself positively is actually to see the positive even when everything seems to be negative. So even when life is just throwing all these things at you, and normally you would take that as being something that was like destroying you from the inside out, from the outside in. It's about seeing the opportunity for growth in that situation, and then picking out the things that you feel would help you grow in that situation, and leaving the things that are hurting you, like things that that don't serve you. And it's really interesting because like the difference in the service to self and service to others path is that in service to self, literally the only difference is that you don't see other people as being a part of yourself yet. You don't see the connectedness of everything. You don't see how when you serve another person, you're actually serving yourself, because you are because like all these people are just projections of yourself. They're all different aspects of God that is being seen by the eyes of God, and from infinitely different perspectives. But the whole point about this that I'm making is that like suffering it all has to do with the way that you take it, like the way that you experience the catalyst that comes your way during everyday life. And the best way to relieve that suffering is to just change the way that you take everything that comes to you. So almost just kind of put this, it'll start with like, it almost seemed like you're putting a filter over yourself where you almost don't even allow negative thoughts to penetrate into your mind. And therefore, even when other people are talking about how terrible everything is going, you literally just don't even perceive that negativity. So you don't perceive anything as being bad. So another thing that's really good is sunlight and vitamin D. Get yourself out in the sunlight for at least 30 minutes a day. I tend to stay outside for half a day, or maybe more or less, just depending on the weather. But getting outside is one of the biggest things that you can do to relieve your suffering, or to change your viewpoint and start to see things in a positive way. Because for me, I and this is different for everybody, but for me in particular, when I come out and look at the sun, I feel the love energy that comes from the sun, and I know that the sun in itself is an entity of itself, and its sole purpose is to shed love and light onto everything around it. And so in that's actually like one of the most perfect like systems of absorbing love is by just connecting your consciousness with the consciousness of the sun, because the only thing it does is it portrays love and light. Another weird thing about suffering is that when you're in the middle of it, you don't particularly understand that you're in the middle of suffering. Because if you were able to stop yourself in the middle of it and be like, oh, I'm suffering right now, then you would consciously be able to change that and you wouldn't suffer anymore. Suffering comes from unconsciousness, so it comes from being unaware of what's happening in your mind and in your body and your heart, and it comes from misinterpretation of the external events that are in your life, and it comes from believing that if things don't go exactly the way that you think that they should go, that that things are not going to turn out the way that you want them to, and therefore you'll suffer, or you won't feel good. And all of this is an illusion, because all of it is subjective anyways. So like all the stuff that you experience, it's all based on your interpretation of it. So it's very interesting, because in that point, suffering is also subjective, and it's so subjective that you realize at a point where you see that you can, when you change the way that you look at things, and you change the way that you perceive things, and you change the way that you think about things, it changes the actual manner of the thing. Like it literally will change something from being negative to positive. And like it's weird, because suffering happens from being in your head as well. It comes from being in the future and in the past. And the funny thing about that is that the future and the past are also illusions They're also things that aren't real. And so therefore the only way to perpetuate your unreal suffering is by continuously experiencing unreal things and believing that they're real. And that belief that what you're experiencing is real, or that this whole experience, like another thing that will help to reduce suffering is to realize the length at which all of this goes to. We're infinite eternal beings living in this human body for a short period of time. And when you start to expand your timeline to infinity, or the infinity, then this lifetime starts to seem very, very short. And it seems like it's just like a fleeting passing time period, where it's just like a boom, like a blink of an eye, and then it's gone. And all of this is just, it's meant for your spiritual growth. So it's meant for you to start to see the love in everything and integrate that love into your being. And that's what they mean by sitting in the heart, is that you start to move this energy consciously from the solar plexus sacral area up into the heart, and then you base your energy off of your heart area, because that's actually where the love in your auric field sits. And it's really one of the only ways that you can actually access the indigo ray body, or the pineal gland, or like to decalcify the pineal gland. You know, one of the only ways that you can do that is by accessing the heart first, and then you use the heart as the springboard to basically you move through the heart into the throat, and then through the throat you express that you want to activate your pineal gland, or your indigo ray body, or your light body. And you express that, but like you express it by the action of trying to activate all this stuff, and to really like consciously visualize these energy centers, and start to feel how they affect your everyday life. And you'll start to see that everything is kind of just like energy flowing from one state to another, and none of it is really good or bad in particular. It's just happenstance. It's happenstance happening, you know. And that's really liberating to figure out, because and you realize you don't have to judge everything, and you don't have to keep yourself in this state of perpetual like upkeep, where you have to upkeep your ego, and you have to continuously basically recycle yourself, and then like retell yourself who you are all the time, over and over again. And that can be really, really draining, you know. It can be really disruptive, and it can cause tears in your personalities, and it could cause you to actually experience not bipolar tendencies, but like it's gonna feel like bipolarness, or like multiple personalities, in a way where you're almost having two parts of you that are conflicting with each other, because you haven't chosen whether you want to live in a positive state or a negative state. And that's another thing, is that like this third density experience right now is here for our choosing. It's here for us to choose if we want to express ourselves in the positive way, or if we want to express ourselves in a negative way. And there's no good or bad when it comes down to it, because they both lead to the same thing. All of it leads to liberation in the end, and one of them is just much more destructive and much more difficult to upkeep than the other. But they're both equally valid. And yeah, it's really interesting, because you know, everybody needs connection. So even negatively polarized entities, they still need the connection. You know, they just try to use it to manipulate and control and extort, rather than to send love and light to as many things, to where they could all feel the same liberation that they do. They want to hold that as a power structure for themselves, and there's no problem in that. It's just really unconscious, you know. It's like something that and it just once you get to the realization of when you serve yourself, or when you serve others, you're serving yourself, then it's almost impossible to be a part of the negative polarity, because you realize the folly of that, and like how it's literally pointless, you know. Like it doesn't work, because it's constantly destructing something that you're trying to build up. Like it's basically like you build up this foundation, and then you continuously tear it down, just because you want to build up a new foundation, when you didn't realize that you could just keep building new foundations. And I know that's a weird analogy, but I don't know, I'm just trying to think of it in different ways, you know. But the negative polarity is where most of the suffering will come from. And when you suffer, generally what it is just a misperception. So you're misperceiving the moment, and you're putting labels on it that aren't actually there. And you're basically telling yourself stories or making up stories about what's going on in order to be able to perpetuate your sense of self or your ego. And once you start being able to shed that ego, then you really start shedding your identification with everything, and you'll start to see how pointless the identification with everything is. Meaning, like, to identify yourself and like say this is mine, or like this is something that is mine, because like everything is shared, all of it is energy, and it's all shared between everybody. So there's really no mine or yours when it comes down to it. But yeah, the perpetuation of suffering via thought patterns and thought loops it's fixable, but it comes with consciousness. So you really have to become conscious of your thought patterns and everything like that, and just start to see the folly of suffering, how it can lead you to realization and liberation. But once you're liberated, then there's no need for suffering anymore. I mean, it happens, but it's not considered suffering anymore. It's just considered experience. So therefore, it's not really negative. So, and that's like the heart of alchemy as well, is that when you start to consciously transmute negative energy into positive energy just by the way that you think about it, it actually changes your external reality as well. And people don't realize how much your thought is actually connected to your external reality and what you perceive, but it's very much connected to that. And it makes a bigger difference than you would actually think. And once you start to really start to try to make these connections of your mind and your external environment, then you'll start to see that everything is intimately connected, and there's no separation, really. Like, it's all just one thing being expressed and then labeled as different things. So if you were to stop labeling like this is a bush and like this is a tree, you know, like if you stopped labeling all that stuff, then it would all just kind of be like one thing all happening at the same time, and you wouldn't be able to really compartmentalize things as being experiences, because it would all just be one immediate experience. And so therefore, in a way, you know, your ego is actually necessary to be able to live a life in human form, because without that identification, or that the thought of me being separate from other things, then you wouldn't be able to really have experience as being a separate being, because you'd be just experiencing everything all at one time. Oh man. But yeah, that's just a really quick thing on just some really quick ways that you could start to see the folly of suffering, and just like where the illusion really lies. And it's all about your perception, you know. And so the way that you think about it and the way that you take it, and you can consciously transmute any negative energy into a positive energy, because all energies have both polarities, and it's just what you choose to look at is the side that you tend to start to really experience or feel. But thanks for watching my channel, and I appreciate everybody who has subscribed to me, and I hope to be able to produce more content for you guys. And thank you. I think the next video is going to be maybe about my experiences with just the different expansions of my consciousness, and like different things that I've kind of like I've been able to connect that have changed my viewpoint completely, in order to be able to receive and integrate and hold positive energy in myself all the time, and to really be able to be in my heart space no matter what, and no matter what's going on around me. It's just pulling myself back to my heart space, and yeah, I just want to share with some of the different things that I figured out about that, and the realizations and revelations that I've had about just transmuting negative energy into positive energy and finding the good in all situations all the time, or as much as you possibly can. But thanks again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and see you later.